As we move into fall in the Midwest, we run into our nut season. We have black walnuts, hickory nuts, chestnuts growing out there wild. And this area here, southern Indiana, is certainly a black walnut country. We have a lot of black walnuts. And this is a good nut. The quality of the nut varies from tree to tree because, once again, these are all seedlings, not coming from named varieties. And if you find the better ones, they come close to cracking out like English walnuts. Sometimes you get some that certainly crack out in quarters, and occasionally you get one that will crack you out a half every once in a while. But the thing that determines their quality would probably be how they crack. If you crack them open and nothing comes out but little bitty pieces and you can't seem to get a big piece, then you probably don't have a very good black walnut. Hickory nuts are the same way. If a hickory nut is a good one to eat, a wild hickory nut, then it cracks out big pieces. Flavor isn't going to vary a whole lot from tree to tree. They all taste a lot alike, but they're very, very good. You know, the black walnut is very closely related to the English walnut, and the hickory nut is very closely related to the pecan, and the flavors are very, very similar. Chestnuts used to be very widespread here, but chestnut blight wiped them out, but we planted a lot of Asian chestnuts, a lot of Chinese chestnuts mostly, about 30 or 40 years ago, and most of these trees are bearing now, so there really are a lot of chestnuts available again, and this is something that's worth getting acquainted with. Chestnuts not like the other nuts. The other nuts are all oily and high sources of protein. The chestnut is a carbohydrate, and it's sweet, or it's sweet as soon as you start to chew on it. So you might enjoy them. You can have roasted chestnuts if you make use of those. And these, of course, all these nuts are good in breads, and people use chestnuts in dressing and various other dishes. And if you collected enough that you had some extras, you can do this yourself by roasting them and putting them in the freezer. And then you have a source to cook with. Chestnut dressing is a very good dressing. The other fall foods that I would use, the next one I'm going to mention happens to be a real favorite of mine, and that's the persimmon. Persimmons grow wild in southern Indiana. They grow wild in most of the rest of the Midwest. If you get far enough north, you get out of persimmon range, and if you get far enough south, you get out, but you've got to get pretty far. And the persimmons had enough done with it that there are some named varieties, and so in some respects the persimmon's on the way to becoming a tame fruit, but there are lots of wild persimmons, and you need to be aware that there's an enormous variation in quality from tree to tree. The good persimmons ripen early in the fall, in September, and certainly by the end of October. And they drop their fruit. And when the fruit drops, the cap's loose. And when the cap is loose, it's no longer stringent, meaning that the tannin is gone out of it. If you're not familiar with persimmons and you pick some off a tree and the caps are still sticking to them and you try to eat them, then I'm 100% sure you don't like persimmons, because they are very astringent. In the common everyday parlance in this state, we call it puckering. They pucker your mouth. You have to experience this in your mouth to know what it feels like, but I can tell you what, it isn't pleasant, and you don't eat very much more of it. It just is overpowering feeling that you don't like. But as I say, when the caps come loose, when you can flip the cap off the top of the persimmon, then it won't be astringent anymore. And so this is the kind of persimmon you want to gather, because, I mean, people go out and gather these puckery things and bring them in and eat them and try to eat them, make puddings out of them and so forth. But you can't ever have a product that's any better than what you put into it. So if you get the good fruit to put in, you will have a much better product, whatever it is you're going to use them for. They happen to be a very good wild fruit once they get past this astringent state. But there's a lot of variation in the seedling trees, and you need to watch for this. Some of them don't ever lose this astringency, incidentally. They'll still be astringent. The fruits will still be hanging on in January, and it'll still be that way. It'll still be puckery. But there are a lot of persimmons available. Probably should also say here that not all the trees bear. The persimmon has all its bearing blossoms on one tree and all its pollinating blossoms on another tree, and so we talk about male trees and female trees. So some of the persimmon trees don't bear a thing. They no doubt bloom, but they don't bear anything. And some other tree has a lot of fruit on it. This is because that tree has all of the fruit-bearing blossoms, and hence it's the only one that can bear. So that's out there. You don't want to expect every persimmon tree to have fruit, because they won't have. Well, that's 13 of these things, and the 14th one is the pawpaw. I don't suppose a person could make up a list of wild foods for the Midwest and not mention the pawpaw. The pawpaw seems to be a fruit that people either wax enthusiastic over or they don't like it at all. I guess there is a little bit of intermediate, but not much. I know people who can eat 5 or 6 pawpaws at a time and eat them every day. I'm definitely not in that class. I would eat one pawpaw and I wouldn't want another for 2 weeks probably. And I know other people that the smell of a pawpaw is something they don't like. But pawpaws have a very distinctive odor. They are a very good wild food. They are sweet. They definitely have their own taste, and if you like it, you'll like it. If you don't like it, you won't. It's probably best to eat them at the time when the skins are just starting to turn yellow, as opposed to when they get extremely yellow. Although some people like them then, and I've known people who liked them when I couldn't have eaten them at all because I thought they were too green. They also can be used in cooking. Pawpaw bread, made off of the banana bread recipe, is a very good bread, and actually quite similar to banana bread, even in flavor. So you definitely could use them that way, and there are probably other ways to cook them. Personally, I mostly use them as a raw food and not eating a whole lot of them at a time, because it doesn't take much to satisfy my desire to eat pawpaws. But these are 14 common wild foods, come up probably all across the Midwest. Certainly very common in southern Indiana, and I'm sure in any part of the Midwest that's of this latitude, and probably up as far as the northern part of Indiana, and certainly down here as far as the Ohio River and past. In fact, here, these wild foods would be good, certainly down into Tennessee. Well, that's basically it for the starter list of wild foods. This is something that I hope that you enjoy, and I hope you try. It certainly is a thing that we all could enjoy if we want to. This is E-Country Lifestyles, and we've been talking about a starter list of wild foods for the Midwest. On that list we had dandelions, wintercress, lamb's quarters, popes, morels, mulberries, raspberries, blackberries, black walnuts, hickories, chestnuts, persimmons, and pawpaws. 14 of them. Place to start with wild foods. And I think that anybody could enjoy these, and I hope that some of you will.